She almost didn't notice it at first. The basement had always been a place she avoided, damp, cluttered, filled with boxes of things her family had long forgotten. But that night, something felt different. The light bulb flickered weakly as she pushed aside old furniture, her fingers brushing against dust and cobwebs. That's when she saw it. An old camera. Heavy, black, and oddly warm to the touch, even though it had been buried under a pile of boxes for decades. Curiosity won over hesitation. She carried it upstairs, wiping away the dust, and noticed there was still film inside. Who had left it there? Her parents never mentioned owning such a camera. Her hands trembled as she loaded it into a Photoshop's digital scanner, waiting as each picture appeared on the screen. At first, they were ordinary, snapshots of a family picnic, a street she didn't recognize, a blurry birthday cake. But then, the final image appeared. It was her. Not years ago, not for her childhood. No, the photo showed her as she was right now. The same haircut, the same clothes she had worn to bed the night before. And she was sleeping. The shot was taken from inside her own bedroom, from the corner near the closet. Someone had been there. Her stomach dropped. How could this be possible? Who took it? She felt her chest tighten as she looked around the quiet house. Every shadow suddenly suspicious. Did someone still have access to her room? Did they watch her every night? She wanted to call someone, anyone, but her phone slipped in her shaking hands. The thought sank in heavier and colder than the air in the basement. If there was a picture of her sleeping last night, that meant whoever took it might still be close. Maybe even closer than she realized. Her heart pounded. She turned toward the stairs as a floorboard creaked above her. And that's where the story begins. She froze at the sound of the creaking floorboard above her. For a long moment, the silence pressed down, heavy and suffocating. The camera weighed in her hands like a secret she wasn't meant to uncover. Slowly, she set it down and forced herself to breathe. Maybe it was just the house settling. Maybe. But deep down, she already knew something about this wasn't right. Her name was Claire. She had lived in this old house for nearly 20 years, since her parents first moved here when she was a child. The basement had always been her least favorite place. She remembered being 7 years old, tugging on her mother's hand, whispering that she heard voices below the floorboards. Her mother laughed it off. Just the pipes, she had said. Claire grew up trying to ignore the unease, but tonight, holding that camera, it all came rushing back. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the printed photograph. There she was, lying in her bed, one arm curled under the pillow, the blanket slightly slipped from her shoulder. Every detail was exact. Too exact. She could almost feel the phantom presence of someone standing in her room, watching her while she slept. The photo had been taken from an angle near her closet, which meant someone had been in the room long enough to wait for her to fall asleep. Her mind raced. Who could have been? Her parents had passed away years ago, and she lived alone now. No doormats. No one had keys. Or, at least, no one should have keys. She tried to remember the basement. The old camera had been wedged behind a stack of boxes marked with her father's handwriting. He had always been quiet about the basement, never letting her play there, never explaining why he kept it locked. She felt her pulse quicken as a thought surfaced. What if her father had known something? What if the camera wasn't forgotten at all but hidden? The more she thought about it, the more questions surfaced. Who developed the earlier photos? Why were there strangers she didn't recognize in them? Why was her picture the last one? Claire pushed the chair back and locked all the doors and windows, her hands trembling. The house was supposed to be her safe place, but now the walls felt like they were closing in. Every sound was magnified. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock, the faint whistle of wine through the cracks. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere in the house, was listening to her movements. She grabbed the camera again, desperate for answers, and noticed something she had missed before. Tucked inside the cracked leather strap was a slip of yellowed paper. On it, in faint handwriting, were only 4 words. Do not look back. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, almost against her will, she turned her head toward the dark hallway behind her. Claire's hand tightened around the slip of paper. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she sat frozen, trying to process what it meant. Do not look back. But why? Who had written it? Was it a warning or a threat? The longer she stared at those 4 words, the more her mind turned them into a riddle. She didn't dare glance over her shoulder again. Instead, she stood up and moved toward the living room, her body trembling with each step. The photo was still clutched in her hand, the woman in the picture, herself, mocking her with proof that someone had been watching. The knowledge clung to her skin like ice. Claire wasn't a fearful person by nature. Friends often tease her about being too rational, too calm in situations where others panicked. But tonight, her logic had abandoned her. She thought about her father again. He was meticulous, almost obsessive, about locking things away in boxes, especially things in the basement. Growing up, she sometimes found him standing at the top of the stairs late at night, staring down into the dark as if listening. She had never asked what he was waiting for. Now she wished she had. Her thoughts spiraled further when she remembered the neighbors. Over the years, a few had whispered about strange happenings in the house. Disappearing pets, lights turning on and off when no one was home. Once, an elderly woman from across the street told young Claire to never keep mirrors uncovered at night. At the time, it felt like superstition. Now, those warnings felt less like folklore and more like forgotten truth. The conflict in Claire's mind deepened. Should she seek answers, or should she run? Calling the police felt useless. How could she explain a decades-old camera with an impossible photograph? Would they even believe her? And if they didn't, what then? She'd be left alone in a house where the shadows felt alive. She glanced at the photograph again, this time noticing something new. In the corner of the picture, barely visible in the darkness, was the faint outline of another figure. Someone standing just beyond her bed, watching. Claire's stomach turned. She zoomed in on the image with shaking hands, but the face was obscured. All she could make out was a tall silhouette. Not her father, not anyone she recognized. Whoever it was had been close enough to touch her. Suddenly, her phone buzzed against the table, startling her. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Stop looking. Her throat went dry. She hadn't told anyone about the photo. She hadn't told anyone about the camera. And yet, someone out there knew exactly what she was doing. Was the message another warning, like the slip of paper? Or was it a command from the very person who had taken the photo? Claire's chest tightened as she stared at the glowing screen, torn between fear and the urge to uncover the truth. Deep inside, she knew the choice she made next would decide whether she finally discovered what haunted her house, or if she'd become the next secret buried in its walls. Claire's fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles turned white. The message glowed on the screen. 2 words impossible to ignore. Stop looking. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Who had sent it? How did they know? She locked the phone, but the reflection of her own face staring back in the dark glass unsettled her even more. She wasn't alone. She could feel it. Every instinct told her to leave the house, to run into the street, to knock on a neighbor's door and never look back. But something stronger kept her rooted. The photo, the camera, the note. If she left now, she'd never know the truth, and she'd spend the rest of her life haunted by questions she was too afraid to answer. The old floor groaned again above her. This time she was sure it wasn't the house settling. Someone was moving, deliberately, slowly, as if they wanted her to hear. Claire swallowed hard and forced herself to the staircase. Each step creaked as she climbed, her pulse sinking with the rhythm. She remembered her father's face, pale and tired, the way he sometimes avoided her gaze when she asked why the basement door stayed locked. A man who kept too many secrets. What if this was one of them? At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched long and dark, the shadows seeming thicker than before. Her bedroom door stood slightly ajar. She froze. She always closed it at night. Always. Her breath caught. Someone had been inside. Maybe they still were. She edged closer, clutching the camera like a weapon. Her hand brushed against the cracked strap, and she thought of the note again. Do not look back. Was it a warning from someone who'd been through this before? Someone who hadn't survived? Her phone buzzed again, making her flinch. Another message. This one said, "You're in the wrong room." Her eyes darted back to her bedroom door. The wrong room? Then where? Suddenly, a faint click echoed from behind her. The sound of a door unlocking. Slowly, carefully. The basement. Claire's skin prickled as she turned her head. The basement door, which she had shut tight, now hung open just a crack. A thin line of blackness stretched across the floor like a wound. Her breathing quickened. Every part of her screamed not to go back down there, but she couldn't stop herself. She stepped closer. The air grew colder, heavier, almost pressing against her chest. She thought she heard something below, low, steady like breathing. She raised the phone, her thumb hovering over the call button, but froze when she noticed something strange. In the glass reflection of the phone screen, she saw movement behind her. A figure, tall, unmoving, watching. She spun around, and the hallway was empty. But the camera in her hand suddenly whirred to life, clicking as if taking a picture on its own. The flash lit up the hallway for a split second, and in that instant, she saw someone standing right beside her. The camera's flash burned the hallway in white for only an instant, but it was enough. Claire saw the figure standing at her side, tall, faceless, and impossibly still. By the time her vision cleared, the hall was empty again. Her breath came fast, ragged. She wanted to run, but her legs felt locked in place. Shaking, she lowered the camera and glanced at its display. A new photo had appeared. This one was darker, blurrier, but unmistakable. It was a picture of her standing in the hallway, just as she was now, terror frozen on her face. Her chest tightened. Someone, or something, was controlling the camera, and it was capturing her in real time. The phone buzzed again. Another message. You shouldn't have found it. Claire's hands trembled as she typed back for the first time. Who are you? The reply came instantly. Ask your father. She nearly dropped the phone. Her father had been dead for years, but the words pierced her like a knife. The basement, the locked boxes, his sleepless nights staring into the dark. Had he known? Worse, had he been part of it? Her mind raced back to the photo of the strangers on the old roll of film. What if they weren't strangers at all? What if they were people who had lived here before? People her father had known. People who never left. The air grew colder, and she realized the basement door was now wide open. No sound came from below, only a silence so thick it felt alive. She stepped back, phone in hand, debating whether to flee or face the truth. Her father's shadow loomed in every memory of the house, and now it felt as though he was still here, waiting for her to discover something he had hidden. Another vibration rattled her palm. A final text, short and sharp. It was never your house. Her eyes widened. She looked at the hallway walls, the familiar pictures of her childhood, the creaky wood floor she thought she knew so well. For the first time, it all felt wrong. Not hers. Not safe. A borrowed place. Perhaps even stolen. And then, from the basement, came a sound that shattered her paralysis. A voice. Low, rasping. Whispering her name. Claire. Her heart slammed against her ribs. It wasn't her imagination. Someone was down there. Or had always been down there. She forced herself forward, each step a battle between dread and determination. If she didn't go now, she would never know the truth. She reached the doorframe, staring into the abyss below, and gripped the railing tightly. Somewhere in the dark, the whisper came again. But this time, it was a voice she recognized. Her father's. Claire gripped the railing so tightly her fingers ached. The voice drifted up again, faint but certain. Claire. Her father's voice. Impossible. He'd been gone for years. Yet the sound of it, the exact weight, the exact warmth, pulled her down a step. Then another. The camera in her hand clicked on its own, snapping another photo. She didn't dare look at it. Her whole body trembled, but some part of her needed to know the truth. If her father had left something behind, an answer, a warning, this was her last chance. The air thickened as she descended into the basement. It smelled of earth and dust, but under it lingered something metallic. The light bulb above flickered, fighting to stay alive. And there, in the center of the floor, stood a man's silhouette. Dad! Her voice cracked. The figure didn't move, but when the light stuttered again, his face came into view. It was him, pale, thinner than she remembered, but him. She staggered forward, tears stinging her eyes. Al, how are you here? His lips parted. You weren't supposed to find it. She froze. The camera? He nodded slowly, his gaze shifting toward the old boxes stacked against the far wall. It doesn't take pictures. It takes people. Her blood ran cold. Images rushed through her mind. The strangers in the photos, the way the camera clicked by itself, the way the shadows moved with every flash. They hadn't just been photographs. They were prisons. Her father's voice dropped lower. I kept it hidden, locked away, but you brought it back. His eyes darkened. And it wants you now. As if on cue, the camera in Claire's handward, the lens turning toward her like a hungry eye. She stumbled back, her pulse racing. No, I won't let it, she shouted. She raised the camera, aiming it at the silhouette of her father. You're not him. You can't be. The figure stepped forward, and for a brief, horrifying moment, his face flickered, half her father's, half something faceless and hollow. Claire's finger pressed the shutter. A blinding flash filled the basement. When her vision cleared, the figure was gone. Shaking, she dropped the camera. Its screen glowed, displaying the newest photo. Her father, trapped inside, staring at her with a look of sorrow and warning. Tears streamed down her face. It was over. At least, that's what she thought. She picked up the slip of paper again, the one hidden in the strap. For the first time, she noticed faint writing on the back, faded with age. For new words, you're already inside it. Claire's breath caught. She turned the camera toward herself. And on its screen, she saw her own reflection staring back. Not moving, not breathing, already frozen inside the frame. For a long time, Claire didn't move. The basement was silent again, except for the faint hum of the flickering bulb above her head. The camera sat heavy in her hands, its screen still glowing faintly with her reflection, trapped, lifeless, and staring back at her. She wanted to throw it, smash it, bury it so deep no one would ever find it again. But she couldn't, because now she understood why her father had locked it away. He had spent his life containing something no one else would believe, carrying a secret that had cost him his peace, maybe even his soul. The strangers in the photos, the warnings, even the whispered voices, they were all fragments of people caught inside. Prisoners of an object that was never meant to be touched. And now, she was part of it too. Claire carried the camera back to the basement shelves and set it down, her fingers trembling as if letting go of it was harder than holding on. She placed the note back inside the strap, folding it carefully, as though honoring those who came before. Then she closed the box around it and slid it deep into the shadows. For the first time all night, the air felt still, quiet. She stood there, breathing in the silence, knowing the truth but unable to share it. Who would believe her? A cursed camera, a basement full of whispers, her father's shadow lingering in the corners. No one would ever understand. But maybe that was the point. Some secrets weren't meant to be explained, only carried. Claire walked up the basement stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. She locked the door behind her, double-checking the latch, just as her father had done all those years ago. And as she leaned her forehead against the wood, she whispered softly, almost like a promise. It ends here. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe one day someone else would stumble across the camera, pull it from the shadows, and repeat the same mistakes. But for now, it was hidden. For now, she could breathe again. As she turned off the kitchen light and let the house slip into darkness, Claire thought about the words on the note. Do not look back. Maybe they weren't just a warning about the thing in the basement. Maybe they were something more. A reminder that some horrors, some regrets, are best left behind us. And so, she chose to look forward. Sometimes the scariest truths are the ones that live quietly in our homes, in our memories, in the things we inherit without understanding. Claire's story is a reminder. Curiosity can uncover answers, but not all answers bring peace. If you found yourself in Claire's place, would you have looked or would you have walked away? Remember, not every picture tells a story. Some stories keep you inside them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more chilling tales that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark.